Can you try again, Sarah?
Yeah, it's not possible.
It's not possible. Okay, just give me a second. Okay, maybe in the meantime, you can I just allow you a few minutes to just introduce yourselves and share with colleagues what is it that you do, and then I'll make sure that I sort out the videos. Thanks.
Yeah, unmute Felicitas.
Of course, on mute. I was just saying thank you so much for everybody who's still with us, for bearing with us through the power cut and the technical difficulties. Sarah and I are very happy to have you with us today to hear about child-friendly cities. My name is Felicitas Sodona, and I'm a senior consultant in Arup's Foresight team, and my focus is on urban futures. Sarah, do you want to introduce yourself, given that, yeah?
Okay, that's fine. Hi, everyone. Likewise, as Felicitas, I'm very happy to be here and to have the opportunity to share with you the work that we've been doing on child-friendly cities. My name is Sara Candiracci. I'm an urban planner as background. I'm an associate director at Arup, where I'm leading the work on inclusive cities and social value in the Europe region. I've been doing a lot of work over the years on child-friendly cities, and we're going to share this with you today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And yeah, Sarah and I are going to play tag today in the presentation. I'm going to be introducing the concept and some of the core principles of child-friendly cities, sort of more theoretical background. And Sarah will then go into sharing some projects where we have applied that thinking on the ground. I'm going to quickly give you also an introduction to Arup and who we are as a company. I'm aware that you might not actually be familiar with us. So Arup is a global collective of built environment professionals in the widest sense, and that sort of comprises of designers, engineers, sustainability consultants, advisors, and other built environment experts. So it's a very broad sort of perspective that we take on the built environment. And our focus is and has been over the last few years very much on sustainable development and shaping a better world. And that is really, we're looking to use the built environment professions and the tools that we have as professionals in this industry to support a just transition and sustainable development. I might just continue, Sarah, if you could keep an eye out on...
Can you share the screen, or is only me?
I cannot, no.
Okay.
But that's all right. I will just give a quick introduction to perhaps child-friendly cities at Arup, and then we'll see if the slides come back on, because I think the rest of this I cannot speak to without the slides.
Well, maybe sorry for interrupt. If maybe we send the PowerPoint, I don't know if they can share.
We can try that, but I think it is pretty big. Would you mind trying that in the background while I?
Okay, maybe I can send to. I can send via WeTransfer. I will try. Okay.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. So at Arup, we have been working on child-friendly cities concretely since 2017. And that was following the launch of a publication that you might be aware of, which is called Cities Alive, Designing for Urban Childhoods. And that comprises of our thinking around child-friendly cities. And ever since, we've been working on a variety of projects through the lens of child-friendly cities. And particularly, we have been doing work around the topic of play, as well as early childhood development. And we have partnered with people such as the Lego Foundation, IKEA, National Geographic, and the Bernard Vinlier Foundation. These have been sort of our core partners, and Sarah will be able to tell you much more about these projects. Wonderful.
Sarah, please, I think you're fine now. You can go ahead.
Amazing. Sarah, do you want to go forward to the red slide? I think that's perfect. Exactly. And with the introduction over, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the context and the core principles of how we at Arup think about child-friendly cities. Next slide, please, Sarah. Importantly, we don't think about child-friendly cities just as playgrounds. There are two key quotes here that you can read, one from Colin Ward and the other one from Herman Matten, that sort of comprise that thinking. So we do not mean childish cities full of color and full of playing equipment. Instead, we mean cities where children are part of urban life in the same way as adults are, and where the urban fabric doesn't pose a risk to their development and health, or a barrier to access. We also don't speak of, yeah, thank you, Sarah. There's a couple of,
okay.
Yeah, no, that's like, you can go forward, thank you. In our research, we have defined 5 core challenges for child-friendly cities. Those challenges are traffic and pollution, crime and social fears and risk aversion, rapid urbanization, high-rise living and urban sprawl, inadequate and unequal access to the city, and isolation and intolerance. And depending on the local context, these challenges play out more or less acutely. So, for example, in London, one of the key challenges to urban childhood is risk aversion, for example. So the fears that might or might not be grounded in actual challenges in the urban environment. Whereas in South Africa, we've often found that actual crime is a huge challenge that needs to be addressed. You will see that many of these challenges also impact adults and other members of society. The key difference, though, is that the impact of the built environment that it has on children is much grander because of the development that children are in, and the impact it thereby has on their future. So if their development is impacted as young children, then they might have health issues as they grow older, and that consequently also has an impact on the societies that they live in. And on the right, you can see a couple of examples of the role the built environment can play in children's development. For example, studies show that the characteristics of physical space impact learning and memory formation. Then chronic noise exposure can result in lower cognitive functioning and unresponsive parenting. And lastly, crowding can elevate physiological stress in parents, and that can, in reverse, cause aggression and aggressive behavior in young children. So the role of the built environment has previously not been recognized and acknowledged very much, but we have brought together these kind of early childhood and child development studies with the built environment. And could you move to the next slide, Sarah? And to address these challenges and to ensure a healthy upbringing for children, we have defined child friendliness as defined below, as the relationship between, on the one hand, the availability of things to do in an environment, combined with the levels of freedom or independent mobility that a child has to explore and enjoy them. And this is based on the framework of Finnish academic Marketa Kita. And we have demonstrated that you can see it on the site in the scenario diagram of how this plays out. I'm going to illustrate that quickly in the next slides. So, for example, the built environment in vulnerable contexts can contribute to conditions that negatively impact children's development. This seems quite obvious, right? But what that then means is it leads to a wasteland or a cell scenario where there's a very low availability of things to do. And in the cell scenario specifically, there's also low levels of freedom or independent mobility. So children are kept indoors because, out of fear, mostly of risk to their health and well-being. Whereas in the wasteland scenarios, they might be allowed to roam freely, but there is not very much in the built environment that is stimulating and positive, and rather harmful. In the next scenario, which we call the glasshouse scenario, in contrast, there is a lot of availability of things to do, but there is little or no freedom or independent mobility for the child. So in essence, the child is locked indoors, even though it could benefit from the outdoor environment that could be stimulating and very positive on their development. And in the UK, for example, active outdoor play is struggling to find a place in the lives of children today. And children are also oftentimes too busy to play. And the last scenario is the scenario that would be our preferred scenario for child friendliness, where we have a good balance between the availability of things to do in an environment and the levels of freedom or independent mobility a child has to explore and enjoy them. And sorry, next slide, Sarah, thank you. And to get to this scenario, this preferred scenario of child-friendly cities, we have defined 2 key principles. The first principle is called children's infrastructure, and this is the networks of spaces, streets, nature, and interventions that allow children to develop physically, mentally, and socially. So we're really thinking about the ways in which children can explore the city, and you can consider it similarly to green infrastructure, blue infrastructure, etc. So it's the network as well as the spaces outside of playgrounds, of course. Playgrounds can be part of it, but it should go beyond that as well. And the second principle is what we call everyday freedoms. And everyday freedoms are the playful behaviors and the freedom to explore as part of everyday life and throughout the city. So that's where they combine with children's infrastructure. And as part of that, what we would generally consider is age-friendly design principles. So, are we considering scale, for example, as part of the design? So just really thinking about the height of children and what they will and how they will experience their space. Or are we thinking about the stimuli the spaces can provide for children, positive stimuli versus negative? And similarly, we also might think about the play value of the things that we design. So how playable, if you want to call it that, is an environment, and how inviting for a child to play is it? And the benefits for child-friendly cities there's a vast range of benefits for child-friendly cities, and they span across the points outlined below: health and well-being, safety, resilience, the local economy, stronger communities, nature and sustainability. And the benefits can also expand to being a catalyst to improving cities. And in our work, we've oftentimes found that by focusing on the needs of children, we are providing a unifying theme to navigate sometimes very complex challenges and gain the support for progressive ideas. Lastly, for me, one point I wanted to make is the quote here on the right, which is by Enrique Peñalosa, who is the former mayor of Bogota, Colombia. And he's identified children as a kind of indicator species. And he says, if we can build a successful city for children, we will have a successful city for all people. And what that means really is that the benefits that we create by considering children in our design will benefit all of the members of society and all citizens. And with that, I'm going to hand over to you, Sarah.
Thank you, Felicitas. So to complement the presentation from Felicitas, I'd like to share with you some additional work that we've been doing over the years on child-friendly cities, which builds on the Cities Lab application that now very quickly Felicitas introduced, and then also based on additional research work that we've been doing as ARO, but at the same time in collaboration with different partners and organizations. The first piece of work I'd like to discuss with you and present you is the Proximity of Care Design Guide, which builds on which was developed in collaboration with the Bernabéu Foundation, which is a Dutch foundation looking at how to improve the conditions and the well-being of young children, so targeting the age 0 to 5. And they approached us several years ago and asking us a question, which is also the question that drives the Urban 95 program, which is if you could experience the city from 95 centimeters, which is the height of a healthy 3-year-old child, what would you change? So since then, since we basically decided to bring together their, I think there is a mic open. Sorry, would you mind to mute your mics? Thank you. No. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Sorry. Is it possible to mute the mics? Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we basically are collaborating with the Bernabé Foundation and joining, bringing together their knowledge on early childhood development and our expertise on urban design and planning. So with them, we decided to work looking at the needs of young children, 0 to 5 in particular. And why this? Because we know that the age 0 to 5 is called the golden years, because it's when the 80% of the brain architecture of children develops. And this creates the foundation for their well-being, of course, but also for their mental structure and hence future development. Because depending on where the children grow up and depending on the type of relationship that they have with their caregivers, with their communities, with their peers, this has a huge impact on their development. So if we manage to create urban environments, spaces where young children can thrive, this has a huge impact not only for the present, but also for the future. We also decided through our work to look at different type of city makers or decision makers, those that has a key role to play in city planning design. Because what we saw is that city authorities, practitioners, developers, and also those that work like child development practitioners, so those people that work for children development, they often don't work together, they work in silos. So what we're trying to do is really to bring together these two different worlds. So the world of practitioners, urban practitioners, at the same time the world and expertise from early childhood development. And so through our work, we're really trying to find a common language and a common way of working together to kind of join forces, because it's the best way for achieve stronger impact for children. So the first piece of work that we did based on very comprehensive research and detailed research, we developed the proximity of care design, the proximity of care framework, which is a tool that that explain this relationship, the relationship between and assess the relationship between the key foundational needs of children, which is health, protection, stimulation, and support, and the relationship, their interrelation with the urban environment at urban scales. The framework is an assessment tool that allows the user to understand what can be done in the urban environment at household level, neighborhood level, and city level to improve the healthy conditions, the protection conditions, the stimulation condition, and the support condition for children, the caregivers, and pregnant women. So when we work with young children, it's always very important to work and consider caregivers, not only because young children 0 to 5, especially when they're toddlers, they cannot really express what they need, also because if the moment you improve the conditions of a caregiver, as a result, you're actually creating the optimal condition also for their children. As also Felicita briefly showed, if we improve if we reduce the noise pollution, for instance, in the environment, this of course reduce the level of stress that caregivers have to face. So for the proximity of care design guide, we launched an initial version of the guide in 2021, and we decided to focus on informal settlement and refugee settlement as target urban context. And why so is because at that time there was already, there were different publications on young children development in cities, but we felt that nobody was paying enough attention to the most vulnerable children, that are those living in informal settlements and in refugee settlements, because we know that there are home to 2 million of them worldwide. And also because we know that the work done in informal settlement, refugee settlements, is mainly looking at the functional needs of their residents and their children, because the priorities in this context are many. And so when authorities or practitioners, they work in this context, they need, of course, to prioritize drainage or water supply or housing or road infrastructure. So our point was, what about if the moment you design for these basic or functional interventions, can you add, is it possible to add some elements that looks also at the needs of children? So can we add some, like for instance, the way we design a water distribution center or water or sanitation facilities, can we add in that facility also some elements that consider the needs of the caregivers and children? So that was kind of our aim for developing the first version of the guide, looking at this context. And we did that in collaboration with 4 organizations, also in South Africa with the VPUU. But then after we launched the guide, we received a lot of interest from city developers, city authorities, asking us to kind of expand the guide to make it relevant to different type of contexts. So not only for vulnerable urban contexts, but also for like kind of more formal urban settlements and cities. So we decided to partner with 10 additional practitioners around the world, looking at different urban contexts, at different urban scales, and we work with them through a training program. So basically, we run the training program with these practitioners on how to use the proximity of care design guide, the old version of it in their context, and through the knowledge that we gain from the application of the guide in all these different contexts, and I'm going to show you some of the examples we did. We basically developed a new version of the guide, which is this one, which was launched a couple of weeks ago and is available online. So the guide is basically a free online tool, resources that is for all people working in cities and child development to use to embed child and family friendly principles into their work. So because we know that the basic idea of our approach is that we know that practitioners, city authorities are already very busy, and in most cases, there is a lack of resources. So we decided to propose our approach as a tool which can be embedded into the life cycle of an urban project. So we look at how in each key stage of a typical project, like the design, the design implementation, which steps can be taken by the users of the guide to implement these child-friendly principles into their work. We also included a step which is about influence, because we know that it's extremely important to use any urban project as a way for influencing key decision makers, for also influencing communities in behavior change, communities, residents, key stakeholders in behavior change, because we often forget how important actually is also the behavior of people in designing and also managing and operating infrastructure or interventions that are designed. So this is kind of the overall structure of the guide. And in the guide, as I said, for each stage of the life cycle, we then identify different steps. And for each step of the cycle, we also include in tailored advice for different practitioners, different users of the guide. There are tools which are available online. There are case studies to show how to inspire people, to show how things can be done in different urban contexts. And also there are some blogs and more in-depth presentation of the work, not only of our partners, but also that we identify around the world that can inspire people, because there is a lot happening, which is very good. I will now like to give you like a sense of some of the work that we've been doing with, in particular, 3 of the 10 partners we've been working with the new version of the guide. And I'm presenting these 3 because after the training program, we went through a selection process based on a work that they've done. And we gave a grant to each of these partners to further develop their concept idea, a design idea, and also to implement a pilot of their idea. So the first project is in Chile, in Valdivia, And we did it with an organization called Ciudad Emergente. And basically, they use the proximity of care design guide to transform one main road in the neighborhood of Alvidia into an environment where the needs of the toddlers, the needs of the children were met. And they did that by upgrading existing public spaces and playgrounds, and also connecting them with a better bike and pedestrian infrastructure. They've been working with young children and caregivers from a kindergarten, which was suffering from, is still suffering because part of the project is still under implementation, from a very high noise pollution, because the road is trafficked by cars and trucks. So this is creating a lot of challenges for these young children. The second project which I find very interesting is the work that we've been doing with Espacio Lúdico in Montevideo in Uruguay, looking not only at young children, but young children which are deaf. So we've been working with community groups and schools in Montevideo, a deaf school, and trying to identify solutions to improve the condition of the children in their neighborhood, because they are definitely not taken into account into design of cities. They also prototype a tool, which you can see on the right, which promote the communication interaction in public space between deaf children and caregivers, and express themselves in different languages. Basically, you can learn some basic languages, some language, how you call it, language, sign language. And so it's a nice way for interacting with this group of the population. Another interesting project that we did with Estudio Mais in Brazil is this intervention, who I find quite interesting because they use one particular entry point for urban regeneration, which is breastfeeding, because breastfeeding is a taboo, not only in Brazil, but in many cities around the world. So they basically partner with organizations looking at natal care, caregivers, and then they work with the community in that neighborhood, which is an informal settlement as well, looking at how to create a public space where women who are breastfeeding can feel safe and comfortable. And this in turn became really a space for community meetings and for interaction. To conclude this first part of my presentation, I'd like to show you a video, that we did in Peru, a project in Peru.
Sarah, can I just double check? The video is not supposed to have a sound. We can't hear any sound.
I know.
Still nothing.
But it's in Spanish anyway. So, but can you read the?
What if you
can you read the subtitle?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, sorry. So you didn't hear the sound, right? Can you hear me now?
Not at all. Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. But well, it was but you could read the subtitles, right?
Of course, yes.
Okay, yeah. Well, it was in Spanish, so it was. But I hope you. But basically, I wanted to show you like a very practical example on how we translated the proximity of care principles into real projects. So I just wanted, because sometimes yeah, video images can really help to understand what can be done by applying these principles into a neighborhood. But I can send you the link of the video after the call, so you can also hear the sound.
Okay, thank you. You can also, Sarah, just share it on the chat so that everyone can
okay,
have an
do
access
that.
to it. Thank you.
Okay, maybe after I finish the presentation. Otherwise, I only have 2 screens. But yeah, I'll share with you as I finish my presentation. So the second tool and work that I like to share with you is the one we've been doing, focusing on play, in particular with the LEGO Foundation and with the Real Play Coalition, which is a coalition including Arup, LEGO Foundation, National Geographic, and IKEA. We decided to work on the topic of play with this organization because we know that play is extremely important for children well-being and skills development, because through play kids can learn. They can learn social skills, emotional skills, physical skills, cognitive skills. So it's extremely important for their development and their well-being. At the same time, we know that there is a play gap, that people as children, as also Felicita showed before, are playing less than they were playing in the past, either because they are living in an environment that is not really supporting them on this, or only because maybe they are busy, too busy, or they don't spend enough time, playtime outside. So the toolkit is based on the work. I'm going to show you some examples of the work we've been doing, but it's basically, again, is an online tool which is available and which includes different tools and methodologies and resources and case studies and ideas on how to embed play into the design and planning of cities. At the core of the tool, there is the Urban Play Framework, which is an assessment framework and a design framework to help understanding the complexity of play in the built environment, to look at how through interventions in the built environment, we can actually help children to help the facilitation of play. We can actually help creating opportunities and time for play for children and their families. And also we can create facilities and spaces for play. And again, we're looking at this at different urban scales, from a household to the school to the neighborhood, at the same time at city level, because also the importance of the governance system that we have in place, the legislation, the regulations that are in place that can enable these conditions. So the Urban Play Framework has been used in different contexts. We actually started in Cape Town, in Galicia, where we've been working with the local organization. Then we applied in Milan and then in London as well. And across these 3 cities, the learning, the insight that we got through the application of the tool across these 3 cities, we then all this knowledge was kind of packaged in the toolkit, which I just show you. Given that we are speaking about Durban, South Africa, I just want to show you quickly the work that we've been doing in Galicia, in Cape Town, where we've been working with an organization called Ikalyami. We've been using the Urban Play Framework to undertake a very comprehensive assessment of the conditions of play in the context. You can see here some slides. We organize a consultation with communities, with children, with caregivers, looking different participatory tools, from mapping exercises to a photo contest. And then we also, as we were working with Lego, we also managed to bring some Lego bricks and run co-creation workshops with children and the community. And the insight that we got from this work guided us in designing a play activation for the neighborhood, for one neighborhood, we design a network of play spaces, and the way we design them is looking at how the different design elements that we included in each space could help children to learn a specific skill. For instance, in the first space, we design it in a way for children to learn social skills. The second one is looking at how children can develop the emotional skills by interacting with that particular space. And the third one is about how developing cognitive skills. The implementation of the intervention started before COVID. And so we activated some spaces before COVID, but then COVID, as we know, hit us. And so that changed a lot the situation there, the dynamics in the community. So we had to review the design that we initially conceived. So then we had to kind of reduce also the scope of the implementation. But I'm happy to share that we managed to implement some of these elements that we designed in Galicia. So if you have a chance to go to Cape Town, let us know so you can go and visit what we design. The Urban Play Framework then was used also in Milan, where I'm currently based. And also there we organized different co-creation workshops and assessment workshops at the time, also virtually, because it was during COVID, with school children, with communities, to again understand through the framework what are the play conditions, the context, and then to come up with their solution on how to design improved play elements into the neighborhood. These are some images from the Play Street that we ran just after COVID in Milan. That was the first one in Italy, actually, and involving the city authorities and local organizations. And then in Milan, we develop a play strategy, looking at how to create also their network of play spaces, how also to promote the role of the school at the center of the neighborhood relationships, and also how to use digital play as a bridge to physical play. And the last tool and work that I'd like to share with you, and I think is extremely important, is the work we've been doing on nature-based play. So looking at how to foster connections for between nature and play for children well-being and also climate resilience. Through our work, through our research, we know that nature is extremely important for children, for their well-being, physical, mental well-being, and at the same time, cities need children. Nature, needs children, because the moment you create a connection between children and nature, you're also creating that sense of belonging and respect for nature, which is extremely important for the respect of nature and biodiversity. So children less and less have contact with nature. There are actually already many children in the world that it was realized that they actually have like in nature, the lack of nature is creating many conditions, poor conditions related to depression, stress, and also attention disorder. So this connection with nature is extremely important. We need to restore it. So we organized an event, COP26, with different experts from around the world to start exploring this topic. And then we developed this publication, which is also available online. And through this publication, we actually are exploring how nature-based play can create healthier, more resilient, and also inclusive cities, not only for children, but for everyone. And this creates in return benefits not only for children in the society, but for the planet. And in particular, we are exploring, and there is also a part in the publication exploring it, how to basically mainstream play in nature-based solutions. Because what we saw is that there are so many nature-based solutions is luckily, unfortunately, is becoming more and more important in the way we create like infrastructure in cities. So the moment we add some playful elements into the design of these nature-based solutions, we're actually creating multiple benefits because we're creating an infrastructure that is good for the environment. As you can see from this picture from Copenhagen, at the same time, you can create a space that is good for children, for their well-being, and also for the community, because you create a space for meetings and for social relationship. In the publication, we also identify different approaches on how to include nature, include play into nature-based solutions. And also for each intervention that we are looking at, that I'm going to show you some, we also identify the positives for nature and climate and the positives for society. In the publication, we included 12 case studies, which are analyzed in detail on how solutions are how different organizations around the world have been addressing and implementing these ideas into real projects. So again, this is there are so many good things happening worldwide on this topic, so it's very important to provide them the right platform to be visible so that people can be inspired, can get in touch with these organizations. That's also, we are already doing it. We are helping organizations to connect and to replicate each other ideas and to work together as well. So that I think, because this is not something that can be addressed by only one person in general. How to create child-friendly city is not only one organization or one actor in a city that can do that. It's really a joint effort. We really need to bring together different expertise from, as I said before, bringing together city authorities, practitioners, child development specialists, also developers play a key role because they play a key role in how they shape our cities. So it's very it's a joint effort. So that's why I think it's important also to provide visibility to organizations who are doing a great job worldwide. And here are our contacts details. So please reach out to us if you like to have some additional information. And I will stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ladies. Thank you for your presentations. I will allow the colleagues, if ever they have questions, to just ask questions. Maybe while we're waiting for others to maybe have their questions, I'd like to just check either Sarah or Felicitas, what is it that you guys are able to do in regards of in regards to the rural areas? How much included are those areas, especially with the deaf communities and also with children with disabilities?
Maybe Fiona can start. In the work I've been doing has been focusing mainly on urban areas or peri-urban areas. So we've been looking at different looking at different contexts, but mainly urban context. So we haven't really analyzed what is happening in rural context, but I'm sure that if you take a look at the guides, we can share all the links because they are all available online. I'm sure you can find some solutions that can be adapted depending on the context that you have in mind. Because Arupa, we normally work in cities, but in particular when we look at nature-based solution, of course, we also consider, the entire environment, nature and built environment. But this particular guide is mainly looking at the challenges that children face in cities, in urban context, not much in rural context, because the dynamics are totally different in those contexts.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that answer. Colleagues, I see we have a hand. Zama.
Thank you, Sarah, and for the presentation. Just maybe to go back a little bit to what Phumzile is saying. When you were presenting, saying that it is very important for the kids to play so that they can develop their cognitive skills, I felt very, very bad for the rural kids because of lack of infrastructure and the basic services like water, electricity. That time is taken away from those kids because they need to make sure that they bring fuel for the cooking that day. They need to go fetch water for the cooking. So now probably in the context of maybe Khayelitsha, how was the community engagement in, in creating that culture to say that allow the kids to be kids, and we are prioritizing this project for the kids, for them to be kids?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, yeah, Kalicha is, as we know, is not a rural context. It's a very urbanized context, but definitely which lacks many infrastructure and basic services. So that is a big problem there, because it's not only the lack of these infrastructure and services, but also one big issue, as we all know, is about safety and security for children. Because based also on our assessment, that is the kind of the key issue. And so, again, going back to what Felicita presented, the fact that many kids spend a lot of time inside the house, so the type of interaction because the parents are feeling, they're worried, or if the kids spend time outside, they are in a situation that is not definitely supporting them. So that is a big issue. I think that when we approach that context, Kalicha, we work with a local organization who knows the community, who knows the context. So that is always our approach, to work with local organization, because they already have that network and that knowledge. It is extremely important. I think that the project was very well received by the community, and when Felicita as well was involved in this project. And when we went there was a lot of interest, a lot of engagement from all the community in the project, and also when we organized all the workshops that we did there, also those with the Lego bricks. I remember that there was a couple of mothers who came to us to thank us, because actually it was for them the first time that they could see their kids playing so much. And they were actually very impressed about the skills that their kids had in building, solution with the Lego bricks. And we're talking about kids of 3-4 years old. So we were really targeting small kids in particular. So that for us was very nice to hear. At the same time, made us understand how the fact that children in those contexts, the type of interaction, the type of games or plays that they do, they are in many cases they're limited, or the parents don't have time to play a lot with them, as also it happens in kind of more wealthy countries. But still, I think they were all aware about the importance of play, and I think parents all over the world are, but sometimes we kind of not fully understand how important it is for really developing children skills. So yeah, I'm not sure, Felicita, if you want to add something about that experience in particular.
Yes, I would love to. And I think that's a really important point that you raised. And so I think that the one thing that we did, as Sarah already said, was education, as we call it, and upskilling the parents was a big part of the intervention. So particularly with younger children, as Sarah has presented on before, we cannot think about young children without their parents, because they very much experience the world through their eyes, and they're very much limited also by what they're allowed to do and not to do, etc. So hence the involvement of the parents and caregivers was very, very important, and helping them understand better what the benefits are of play and how important it is to their children's development played a key role in how we engaged the communities. The other thing that we integrated in the design of the interventions was really thinking about the activities that parents were doing on the ground every day, and then seeing how we can make these activities something where children can come along and play as well. So how can we combine both the activities that parents had to do and sort of see how we can make those more playful for children? So for example, there was a play park where parents were not particularly keen to have their kids play alone because of the safety risks to them. So we were combining some of the activities that the parents had to do anyhow, such as hanging laundry, I think it was specifically in that context. So we had a kind of passive observation of children. And then similarly, I think you were mentioning carrying water or collecting other resources. I would probably think about how these activities in themselves can be made more playful. So how can you rather than it being a chore, how can you add elements of imagination and play so that while you do it, it also becomes an educational and a skills development activity? How exactly I would do it, I think I would have to think about it more specifically, but it's about the approach rather than the task itself, I would say.
Okay, thank you, ladies, for those answers. I saw Xola have her hand up. Xola?
Thank you, Phumzile. I've actually put my hand down because my questions have been answered. I was also just curious about the safety aspect in terms of designing these areas, because sometimes you might design an area that's really great, but if the parents still have the fear of letting their kids, play freely without really much supervision, then it would be kind of not used. So I think I have been answered in the sense that there's an understanding that with that age group, if you're looking at under 3 or 3 to 4, there is generally some level of supervision needed anyway. And I think with the discussion I've been adequately answered. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Xola. Do we still have questions on the floor? I saw Felicitas have shared the few links for any information that is needed. I see there's a hand up. Teresa?
Okay, thank you, Chair. This is such an interesting and fascinating presentation, and also very much needed work in our cities, especially within the urban context. We used to have town planning controls where we used to have play lots for children in various areas. There used to be a threshold. You needed play lots for so many number of citizens in a particular area. That's fast being eroded. We are not sort of adhering to those thresholds, those little play lots, especially for the kids between the age group we are discussing now. And they are really, really marginalized for not having these outdoor spaces and, being claustrophobic in dense homes and settlements. And it's really, something that is critical that we need to think about incorporating into our in-situ upgrades of informal housing, even in the urban context within our cities where people are living in high-rise buildings. The children are not having that opportunity to even have a piece of road or a little alleyway cut off and designed as a play spot for them. So it provides a lot of opportunities to integrate this work, especially in all the study areas that you've showed. And I hope that our planning people can introduce that somehow in our zoning controls and zoning, management of approved developments. I was also thinking in business areas, like we have quite a few business parks, and they do provide a good urban setting to perhaps contribute. I was looking at more of a business partnership with the city of allowing some spaces to be created there where this opportunity can be further developed. Thank you so much for such an enlightening presentation.
Thank you so much, Teresa. I also have a question on the chat that is coming from Sandra. She said, how can collecting resources in a rural environment be made friendly and fun for children in rural areas?
For resources, you mean water, I think that in that case, it's really depending on the parents or the caregivers, if they go together. I'm sure that if the kids, they go together, they find a way to make it fun.
Because in some areas, I think with our cities, most of the cities, in some areas you find that children are singly running households. So they do these things. So instead of going out to go and play, you know that you need to come back from school and wash dishes. You need to prepare a meal for tonight and make sure that your siblings, your younger kids, have school uniform ready for tomorrow and so on. So in those contexts, because some of the children in urban areas, they don't actually go and play in these parks because they are too consumed with the socials. They are on the phones, they are playing games, they are, but there are kids that they doesn't even have that access. They know that when I come back from school, or even on weekends, before the day ends, before the weekend ends, I have chores that I need to do because I have other kids that I'm taking care of.
That definitely that is an issue or a condition that several children have to face in not only in rural areas but also in informal context from our knowledge, because the parents work and so they have to take care of their younger siblings, and then they have to do all the chores that they're asked to do. So that is this lack of time and freedom is definitely one key issue that children face in those contexts. How to make this that's playfully really there's not like only one solution. There are many ways that can be done. I think in that case, it's really trying to, of course, as much as possible to reduce the number of activities that the kids have to do that are not related to their childhood, let's say, and trying so to help the families maybe through, if there is a network of caregivers or a support network in that community, to see how they can support those families in needs, and so kind of reduce the the load of work that these kids have to do in their families and for their families. And again, children have a lot of fantasy everywhere, imagination, and so they always find a fun way to do what they're doing. So maybe, I don't know if it's possible to also, if there is like a community group or an organization working in those contexts, to kind of organize a program for, to support these families and to show them also the which kind of games they can do with, which are not expensive, or that they can do every as they're doing their chores, they can kind of create something. So it's really looking at what are the resources available, possibilities available in that context to find together a solution.
Okay, thank you so much, ladies. Zama, I see you have a hand up.
Yeah, I'm thinking about this conversation. Have you ever tried to incorporate such design at the schools? Because sometimes schools will be the only place where kids can get an opportunity to be kids. But however, such infrastructure or such design is lacking to to fully for kids to fully leverage their time at school. Do you think this could be also a good opportunity to integrate such designs at school, to ensure that during break time kids, they're not only just learning the mainstream curriculum, but outside break time after eating, they still get this opportunity to fully leverage, having an opportunity to play.
Yeah, now that is a great point. Thanks for raising that. Because not us directly yet. We're working with schools also on a new project we are doing with LEGO, looking at biodiversity in cities. So we are engaging schools to basically bring this concept of biodiversity into the school curricula in a playful way. But in terms of how to design school spaces, there are many great examples. Like in the Nature-Based Play publication, there is this organization is called Alana. It's an organization from Brazil, and they're doing a lot of work on nature-based schools. So looking at how to integrate natural elements into the design of the schools, so that on one hand you create benefits for children because you increase the possibility to have contact with nature, but they're doing it in a playful way. So then there is like examples from Barcelona or Paris where they have this program called School Oasis, where also they see the school as the hub of the community. So on one hand, redesigning the space of the school in a way that also there includes some natural elements, playful elements, but also the area just surrounding the school to become kind of a space which is safe also for the community to go and use. And then also opening up the school during the weekend, for instance, so that schools with good facilities can also become spaces for communities to go and use during the weekend, like for training courses or cultural activities. So it's really the school as it's so important in particular in those contexts. So it's very important to have them involved and engage them and use them as a catalyst also for change in the community. Yeah, in fact, also I remember in Galicia, when we were talking to the school teacher, they said, look, we have to kind of take over from the parents their responsibility in many cases. So they really have to, because the parents either they don't have like the education, the capacity, the time to really care for those children. So they have this additional role to play in particular in vulnerable contexts. So definitely school is an important space to value and support in these interventions.
Sounds great. Well, thank you. Feli, you have anything else to add?
Well, Sarah summarized it really, really well. I guess the only thing that comes to mind in addition to that would be that I guess the concept of play generally is sort of, how it is culturally perceived oftentimes as something unuseful, something that, kids do when they don't have anything better to do, rather than being valued for what it really is, like taken seriously, because play is essential to children's development, and it can play such a huge role in furthering the development of their skills and their character, their personality, etc. So it really is an essential part of childhood. Yet in some societies, or many societies, it's not seen as such just yet. And Lego, for example, defines it as serious play. So adding the word serious into it to help people understand that it's not just, a frivolous activity, as some people might see it as. And I think that sort of goes back to parents, caregivers, teachers, etc., understanding the role of play and taking it seriously. So how can they redesign perhaps the curriculum to include more playful elements, and as well from a built environment point of view, how can the school itself become this environment that fosters playful activities? So how can we add play value into the things that we design? So, for example, make a bench something that kids can run around, jump over, climb on, etc., rather than it just being designed for the purpose of sitting. And that you can apply to all sorts of things that you will find in a playground, in a school ground, or in other parts of the city as well. And that's really the principle that we are trying to encourage. So it's not about necessarily only designing a playground, but it's about looking at what you already have and how that can be made more playful, because kids will play anywhere, and they will reutilize and try make the most of the environments that they have. But sometimes the environment can be a barrier to them acting naturally and playing. So I would just think about that as well. So how can play be encouraged through the built environment as well as through the behaviors of the caregivers and the adults around children?
Oh, well, thank you, ladies. Thank you so much for joining our session today. And colleagues, thank you very much for your time today, for attending this session. We have now come to the end of our session. Thank you very much, Dr. Sarah, and thank you, Felicitas, for being with us today. Thank you. Until next time.
Thank you,
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye,
everyone.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank
Goodbye.
you very much.